so much, Jamie, for that introduction. It's great to be here. So augmented reality is really creating a revolution in the way that we think about work. And I'm going to talk about the way that content plays into that. So in the context of the industrial Internet of Things, we see augmented reality as really the content layer that brings the Internet of Things to life. It becomes the user interface that allows you to interact with all of the data that is being generated by machines in the workplace. We're in the midst of what we consider the fourth industrial revolution. The three previous industrial revolutions have all created massive increases in efficiency and productivity in the workplace and have generated huge benefits for society at large. And as you can see, the potential economic impact of this fourth digital industrial revolution is massive, literally a GDP scale potential value of this increase in productivity and efficiency that becomes possible when you take augmented reality content and you place it in the context of the work that's being done. So just a little bit about DAQRI. We have over 250 employees now, actually. That number is already slightly out of date. We have experience in wearable technology as well as open source development going back years. And we have an office here in Dublin, actually, that we opened earlier this year, so we're really glad to be here. The way that the industrial internet works today is that a machine generates data and information, and then in some cases it may be connected to a cloud database. It's sending that data up to the cloud, and then the worker has to go and log into an ERP or a PLC system to access that data, and then take manual notes and be able to go back to the machine and make some improvement or do some kind of process. The way that DAQRI fits into this is that it, instead of having to go and log into a system, it gives you that data directly on top of the machine and allows you to do the job much more efficiently and effectively when you have the data in front of you to be able to make better decisions. And what's the difference? What would be the impact of having that information right in front of you? And another thing that we'll talk about a little bit is what does that information actually look like from a content perspective? So these are about a dozen different types of tools, and this tool belt is actually valued at about $150,000. You can see there's tools for metrology, for thermography, to be able to measure your environment, to be able to understand the different aspects of the vital stats of your machinery, your equipment, your workplace. All of these tools are actually contained within the single product of the smart helmet. So it enables you to do all of these various different types of tasks in a single hands-free wearable. I want to also just give a little bit of context about why we chose to pursue augmented reality wearables in the workplace and focus on the future of work. And really what that comes down to is the confluence of three major factors. The form factor allows us to incorporate all of the different sensors that are required to deliver a very, very high quality augmented reality experience. The keys to adoption: if you're utilizing a tool in the workplace that is replacing something that you're already familiar with something that actually gives you greater capabilities, then that's a much easier adoption pathway than asking, say, a consumer to add something additional that may not necessarily fit with their needs. And the ROI is really the biggest piece of the puzzle. So if you look at a consumer device, and you guys have been hearing about augmented reality and virtual reality in the previous session, you really need to have enough content and enough high-quality content producers to validate and incentivize somebody to adopt a new device. And the ROI in VR from a consumer perspective, is starting to get there. But from augmented reality, we're still a ways away from that. Contrast that with augmented reality in the workplace, where the ROI is immediate and crystal clear, and the type of content that you see is delivering immediate results. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what those results can be. What are the actual numbers behind this? What am I talking about in terms of work? These are the types of environments where we see the DAQRI Smart Helmet being utilized. Right now, they can sometimes be repetitive, laborious, and disconnected. What work can be, however, is connected, and it can be a work of art where you're able to connect your workers to the right information at the right time and to each other. It can be purposeful, connected, and empowered. And this change is happening right now. These are pilots that are happening in the workplace. We're seeing fantastic results that are coming back from our pilot case studies. And here's a quick look at an augmented reality interface. This is the type of content that you can create and deliver in augmented reality with the smart helmet, where you're providing step-by-step work instructions that are guiding a worker through a task, thereby reducing the errors and reducing the job completion time. So here's a great study that was done in the context of shipbuilding. There was a task that was repetitive, laborious, and somewhat disconnected, that was actually a 3-week-long process with hundreds of different steps that had to be done extremely precisely in order to deliver a product that is safe for use. And what they found in this study was that by implementing augmented reality work instructions, they were able to reduce the cost of doing this task by 13% and reducing the overall time of the project by 34%, which is massive. Another fantastic example, this is a groundbreaking study that was done in conjunction with Iowa State University by Boeing, and we heard from Boeing and one of my colleagues at DAQRI yesterday on the machine stage, and they talked through this example. So this was comparing 2 different groups of trainees who were first-time trainees learning how to assemble aircraft wingtips. And they compared regular paper manual type of instructions with augmented reality instructions. And you can imagine that when you have work instructions that are visual, spatial, and very intuitive, where you can understand placement and orientation of unfamiliar parts set in front of you in the correct order, it makes sense that you're able to reduce the amount of time that it takes to do the job. But the thing that's really phenomenal is that it decreased the error rate by 94%. And a lot of the cost that's associated with overages and costs and going over budget or over schedule really comes down to human errors. And so this is a tool set. This type of content really allows you to get very near to zero. And actually on the this was the first time around, on the second time around, they were able to get errors down to 0, which is phenomenal. And then a third study that is, again, emphasizing faster time to completion using augmented reality versus the training manual, almost a 50% improvement. It's just phenomenal what becomes possible when you're communicating with people in a visual and spatial way that makes it very easy to understand complex information and complex ideas. Some of the other benefits besides being able to reduce your job completion time and reduce your error rates are increased situational awareness, enhanced vision. So one of the key capabilities of the smart helmet is thermography. When you turn on the thermography application, you're able to see the world in its heat maps. Hands-free digital tools like the telemetry that we talked about earlier, the metrology. And then another component that I'll just touch on briefly is worker biometrics. So we're also incorporating into the smart helmet an EEG sensor that can look at your brainwave activity and measure stress and focus level. So you can imagine that in conjunction with all of the other data that we're delivering and that we're looking at, understanding your stress and your focus level becomes particularly useful. Say you're doing a mission critical task and you see that your stress level spikes. Well, delivering a notification to the worker at that point to say, hey, maybe this is a good time to take a 5 or 10-minute break can save both the worker and the company a lot of heartache. So augmented reality, we think, has a huge potential, not just in the workplace, but in all fields of life. And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the history of these types of breakthrough technologies and where we see augmented reality fitting in. So these are some examples. You'll barely perhaps recognize the one all the way here on your right as one of the first cell phones. So in the context of these breakthrough technologies that are really general purpose technologies that can be used for many, many different types of things, for communication, for connecting people, often they're utilized first in the context of work. And then over time, the cost structure decreases, and you see a miniaturization and a further diffusion and dissemination of that technology across different parts of life. So now we all have a smartphone in our pockets, but when they first came out, they were gigantic and very expensive to manufacture, and really best suited and best utilized in high-pressure decision-making contexts such as the government or the military. In this case, history is a cycle that we actually want to see repeating itself. So augmented reality right now, we find that the best ROI is in the context of the workplace and the enterprise, but we firmly believe that it will continue to disseminate and become available much more widely for use in all parts of life. And one of the key characteristics that we think is really going to drive this dissemination is that augmented reality at its core is a medium for knowledge transfer. Because of its visual and interactive and spatial nature, it allows you to break down and understand complex ideas and communicate also in narrative form in a brand new way that actually puts together the benefits of all of the different previous forms of media in a new package. And we talk a little bit about this concept of cognitive literacy. So what happens when you can take any idea across the sciences or physics or astronomy and really create an experience that you can interact with and understand beyond words, understand visually and intuitively. And it becomes possible to imagine a future where that is a primary way of taking in information. So these are just some of the things that we think about at DAQRI in the future, some of the problems that we're looking at. We're really all about connecting the dots and augmenting people and augmenting ideas. So these are some of the different areas that we're exploring. And this is really the question that drives us to be inspired to continue the work that we do. What if you could put on a helmet and know how to do any job? And what could we accomplish globally if we had over 7 billion artists and scientists, and we were able to share our ideas and understand knowledge in a much more intuitive and frictionless way? So thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.